Toss aside the touchy-feely notions of love in business and recognize the real power it holds. Welcome to the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast with host Steve Farber. Drawing on his work with a wide variety of companies from the Fortune 100 to smaller family-owned businesses, Farber shares inspiring interviews with business leaders and proven strategies for how you can create experiences that your customers will love by developing a culture that your employees, teammates, and colleagues love working in. Discover why and how love, at the end of the day, is just damn good business for you too. Here's your host, Steve Farber.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast. I'm your host, Steve Farber, but I think you probably already knew that. This episode is brought to you by the fine folks at the Extreme Leadership Institute. And I know they're fine folks because I happen to be the CEO and founder of that company. Come check us out at extremeleadership.com, see what we do. You can avail yourself of all the resources there and find out how we go about helping companies to operationalize love, energy, audacity, and proof in the way they do business. My guest today is Debra Poneman. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes I have guests on this show that I've known for a while. Sometimes we have guests who are new friends that I'm just getting to know for the first time. Debra is in a category all her own. We have known each other since I was a wee lad in knickers. Well, I never wore knickers, and I think I was in high school, actually. But we've known each other, I think we did the math recently, 40-something years. So she is my sister in all kinds of ways. And she's also a brilliant thought leader. I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, and then we're going to have a great conversation. So if you think way back to the 1980s, for those of you who were actually around back then, you know, that was the time before the internet, just to be clear. Debra had a program called Yes to Success seminars, which were being taught at the time all over the world. They were taught in Norway, England, Ireland, Singapore, South Africa, all around North America. And the knowledge that people gain from Debra's courses have led to people, many of whom you've heard of. Many of her graduates went on to become mega successful entrepreneurs, New York Times bestselling authors, powerful world changers, millionaires, billionaires, perhaps, and even some household names that you would recognize. I can think of one, for example, that I know you would recognize. It's Steve Farber. I took Debra's course way back in the early days of it. And we're going to hear more about what it is. So back in those days, you know, there weren't a lot of women who were trainers for corporations, but Debra was doing work back then for companies like Mattel, Xerox, McDonnell Douglas, and it was virtually unheard of to find women in those kinds of roles back then. So she was a pioneer. She was all over the media, all over TV, all over the print and broadcast media around the U.S. And then, once upon a time, in 1988, when she was cooking, at the height of her success, she had a book in the hands of a top literary agent. She was in negotiations to have her own TV talk show. I'm telling a lot of your story, aren't I? She was in negotiations to have her own TV talk show, and she gave it all up. She gave it all up because she followed her heart, which is exactly what she teaches other people to do, and she stayed home to raise her kids. So now those kids are grown. One is a chiropractor, one is a sports agent, an award-winning filmmaker, and she's a very proud mom as a result. And she came on back to the scene and brought her Yes to Success seminars back to the world, refreshed, updated for these times. She is an absolute brilliant embodiment of all the things that it takes for all of us to succeed in whatever we want to do in life. And with that, the official welcome to you, my dear, to the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I feel like I should applaud.
You should.
such a good introduction. And you ad-libbed a lot of that. I'm thinking, because most people just read my introduction, and you were like adding some juicy stuff into that.
You know, if I don't have juicy stuff to add after all these decades with you, I don't know who would. So let's, I want to hear the story from you. So you're this, you've been, I was going to say you've been around the block, but that doesn't sound, it doesn't sound particularly nice to say it that way. But you have this tremendous experience, and you know all these people all around the world. You're a successful entrepreneur by your own right. So just tell us how this whole thing got started for you.
Yeah, and then I'm going to tell some stories about you. But and I actually would love to, well, you know what? First, I'll say that for the decade of the 70s, people are going to start calculating how old I am. That's okay. I am like totally down with that. The decade of the 70s, I taught meditation. I was a full-time teacher of meditation, but by the end of that decade, I realized that woman does not live by mantra alone, and I needed to make a little bit of money. And I was living in a meditation community at the time. You know, it was the 70s. I was living in a meditation community, and I thought, okay, I got to make some money. Where do people live who make a lot of money? This is how I decided where to go, either New York or Los Angeles. So I thought Los Angeles is warmer, I'll go there. So I moved to Los Angeles. I thought, okay, how do people make money? They make money selling investments. So I got a job selling investments.
Which you were well prepared for from being a meditation teacher.
Absolutely. It was right up my alley. And so I get this job. It was actually a friend that gave me the job. He thought he'd take a risk. Now he's in heaven, but I think he still regrets it. But that's okay because I never made a sale. I was just so out of my league. But you know that expression, we make plans and God laughs. My plan was to make a lot of money selling investments and go back to teaching meditation. But what happened was that one night, one of my colleagues invited me to a money seminar. Now, I thought it was going to help me be more effective at selling actually we were selling tax shelters. I thought it would help me be more effective.
How can you sell something that you don't even know what it is? How could you possibly have known what a tax shelter was?
I still don't know what it is. But and then we have lots of laughs over it because I'm still friends with all of the people from that firm. I don't think any of us know what it is. But what happened was that one night I was invited to a money seminar, and I thought it would help me be more effective at what I was doing. And I walk in, and it's at the Learning Annex. So I'm new to LA. I don't know what the Learning Annex is. And I thought it was going to be all these suits learning about being effective at sales. And it was a new age crowd. And the guy was talking about the law of attraction. And what he said is that if you're always talking about how poor you are, if you're always talking about doom and gloom and you'll never be able to afford this and you'll never be able to afford that, you start vibrating. And like a tuning fork, the only thing you can draw into yourself is lack and limitation. However, no matter what your financial situation is just talk about the good times to come. Create a vision. People even create these vision boards and just don't vibrate with doom and gloom. Vibrate with prosperity and you will draw that into your life. Well, that was just one of the things he said. Another concept, which I know you live by, you even wrote a book about it, is that if you want to be successful, help other people become successful. And that, what's the name of that?
The Learning Annex program.
At the Learning Annex, right. Yep. What's the name of your book?
Greater Than Yourself.
Greater Than Yourself. And basically that's what the guy said. That's another key to prosperity. Help people become greater than yourself. Well, everything this man was saying just vibrated with me. And I thought, okay, this is why I came to LA. I had to hear this guy because I knew that I was going to stop selling investments and I was going to start researching this body of knowledge. And I realized that there were all these great masters like Napoleon Hill and Wallace Wattles and W. Clement Stone and Emmett Fox and Science of Mind. And they all had written these books about the power of the mind to create your reality. So I quit my job and I started studying everything I could about how to energetically create prosperity. And within 6 months, I put together an incredible seminar, and I did it using the things I was about to teach. And I just want to share with your audience a couple of those things that I thought were really the key to my success, because you know the end of the story is within a few short years, I was all over the world. And that was long before the internet. As you said, we were communicating through phones with curly cords, right?
Yeah, I remember those.
You remember them. There weren't even fax machines. But two of
So about what year was this?
This was 1980. I started in 1980, and actually I started putting together the seminar in 1980. It launched in 1981. And one of the principles I used is that if you have an idea that fills a need or answers a gap in society, and you are so excited about it, don't go around telling everybody what you're going to do, for several reasons. One, and I don't believe that people could steal your idea. They can do it, but they're not you. There could be 1,000 people speaking on leadership. They're not Steve Farber. There could be 1,000 people speaking on success. They're tens of thousands, but they're not Debra Poneman. We each have our unique angle, and we each have the people that are going to be drawn to us. So I'm not worried about people stealing the idea. But the reason why you need to not tell everybody what you're going to do is because what is sacred should be kept secret. Same root, sacred, secret. Your precious idea is certainly sacred. And what happens is that if you share it, one of two things. One is you bump up against the discouragement committee. Those people who are going to tell you all the reasons why your idea isn't going to work. And even if you plow ahead with it, you still have that doubt because the discouragement committee already told you why it's not going to work. The other thing that could happen is that they say, oh, what a fabulous idea. So now you have all the accolades and you're less likely to go out and do it because you already got the praise about how brilliant and great you are. So every time you share it with somebody, it's like you're letting the pressure out, like letting the steam out of the kettle. Keep that steam in the kettle. You don't want your idea to be crushed when it's a tiny seed. Let it grow into a strong plant before you share it with the world. And the other principle that I live by is don't wait until you think you're ready, because you'll never think you're ready. There will always be loose ends. And people say, I'll do it when the kids grow up. I'll do it when I get the settlement money. I'll do it when I get the inheritance. But then there's going to be another loose end when that happens. So what you have to do is know that an idea comes to you because you are the one who is supposed to manifest it. I mean, not to get like all cosmic or religious, because I'm neither of those, but I believe that there are things that need to be manifested on earth for the planet to work. So I believe that that idea is whispered, maybe it's by the creator, into your ear. Start a seminar, start a business. Love is damn good business. It comes from somewhere, right?
Yeah. And you know what? The thing is that we could argue the philosophy around that, and whether or not it's literally true that the universe whispers in your ear. It kind of doesn't matter, right? Because the attitude about it is this is an idea that came to me, however it came to me, and I have an opportunity to either do something with it or not. And if I take the attitude that it is my sacred responsibility to act on that, I'm going to be more likely to act on it. Simple as that.
So brilliant, as usual. Absolutely true. That idea was given to you for a reason. And the truth is, probably so many people who are listening have had the experience that they had a brilliant idea, they didn't act on it, and maybe a year or two later, somebody else made a fortune with their idea. That was my idea. Yeah, you got first dibs on it, but you didn't do anything.
You know, where I hear that a lot, Debra, is because, you know, being an author and living in that kind of space, I hear from people all the time, I'm going to write a book. I got an idea for a book. Can I tell you my idea for my book? So it's the same thing that you're talking about. Well, you've got the idea. Stop talking about the idea, because I could just tell you all the reasons why nobody's going to want to read that. I could tell you all the reasons why there's 1,000 books already written on that subject. And any one of those comments can just snap that sprout right where it's growing. Right. And on the other hand, if I say, oh, that's a great idea, like you said, I can sit back and say, well, I am brilliant. I have a great idea for a book, but there's no book.
There's no book. They say those who talk don't do, those who do don't talk. They just do it.
So you put those principles into practice while you were building something to teach people to put those principles into practice. So you were modeling it as you were teaching it versus saying, I'm going to put all these ideas into practice, I'll make a bunch of money, and then I'll teach people how I did it. You did it simultaneously.
Yeah. The other thing
exactly
is,
what you're saying.
yes. And the other thing is that I never teach anything ever that I don't do myself. Because if I try it on and it doesn't work, then I think, how could I teach people and legitimately be enthusiastic about that principle? So I only use those that work. And that's how I built my business, and that's how I allowed it to thrive.
So around here in this neighborhood, we have a saying, as you know, do what you love in the service of people who love what you do. So if we go back to that heyday of the Yes to Success seminars, you're on fire. You're having a great time. You did love it, right?
Yeah, I did.
But then you went on a different path.
Yeah, I did.
You gave it all up. You walked away from it.
I did.
And so one way of looking at it is you walked away from it, but really what happened is you walked towards something else.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Well, what happened was that the seminar got bigger and bigger, and I had reps teaching all around the world. And as you said in my introduction, I was on TV and broadcast media all over the country. And I still have the articles. I showed you that one. It was from the LA Daily News, which doesn't exist anymore, from 1983. She finds her happiness in helping other people find theirs. Okay, so it's exactly what you're saying. And as my seminar got bigger and bigger, one of my main principles is to follow your heart. And what happened was, on one fateful day in 1988, when I was about to have my own daytime TV talk show, I was in negotiations with the major producers in LA. I was still in LA. And I also had written my Yes to Success book, and I had a great agent, and the agent was shopping it to some major publishers in New York. Something happened that rocked my world, and I gave it all up. And that was that my daughter was born. And I took one look at her and I thought, new passion. I took one look at her and I thought, how could I go around and tell people that they should follow their heart when I did not want to leave her to go to the bathroom, let alone leave her to go on a book tour or get up every morning at 5:30 and tape a TV show. And so I just gave it up cold turkey. And I'll tell you something, people said to me, have you gone out of your mind? And I told every single one of them, absolutely, out of my mind and right into my heart. Mm-hmm. And as you teach, when we make our decisions from the heart space, that's when we have the best results. Because the mind is filled with all of this nonsense, all these lies that people have told us about who we are and about what the world, how the world works. And if we make our decision based on all of those things that we've been told since childhood, we won't make good decisions. But if we just put our actual physical attention on the region of the heart and just ask for the knowledge to come from there, we'll get a lot more truth. And what's so funny, I remember I was supposed to do a tour of Southeast Asia, and this guy's name was Chiang. He was from Singapore. He heard I had the baby and he called me. He says, Debra, you had the baby. Let's get the tour on the books. I said, Chiang, you're going to have to call me back in 18 years. And he remembers it.
Let me put you on hold.
Yes. And then of course it turned into 21 years when my son was born. And, a lot of people ask me, did I ever regret my decision? And did I ever doubt my decision to stay home with my kids? And the answer is absolutely. Of course I did. I mean, how many friends of ours became New York Times bestselling authors while I was home knee deep in dirty diapers? And every time I would turn on the TV, another one of my students was smiling across the airways on Oprah. And the thing is that we're human, so we doubt. So don't think that you're going to make a decision and never have a doubt. But you just have to hold the vision ultimately of where you're going and what you want to contribute to the world. And if you keep that vision strong, then you'll be able to doubt the doubts and keep moving forward. And I have this one story that, is it okay if I share about when I saw one of my students on Oprah and I really doubted?
Yeah, please.
I don't know if I ever shared this with you, but there was one day where the kids were especially not happy, and they were, I think, 2 and 5. Daniel was still in diapers, so it had to be something like that, maybe two and 4. Anyway, so I put them on the couch because I was going to put them in front of the TV. I didn't usually do that a lot, but this was a TV day. And my daughter wanted to watch Barney, okay? And she couldn't say her R's, so she's on the couch, and Wheels Bounty, Wheels Bounty. I'm going to get you Bounty, one of those days. So I'm doing a channel check. Yes, I was doing a channel check. I was moving the dial. And while I was doing the channel check, I am telling you, all of a sudden I see Oprah. Not only do I see Oprah, but I see one of my students on Oprah. Not only do I see one of my students on Oprah, but he was doing a demonstration with Oprah on the power of the mind that I had cognized once in a meditation. This is how I'll show people how powerful their minds are. He's doing it on Oprah, and it's fine that he did, because when I retired, I said to my students, take my stuff, teach it, don't even have to give me credit, just go for it, the world needs it. However, at that particular moment,
I take it back.
Take it back. And Oprah is flipping out. She's like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing. I'm going to show this to my whole staff. And I have these 2 kids on the couch, Wheels Bounty. What did I do?
You need to manifest Barney for them in the moment.
And I'm telling you, at that moment, talk about doubts. At that moment, I absolutely knew for a fact I had ruined my life. And a true story, I'm standing in front of the TV and I burst into tears. And I'm like, that was supposed to be me. And the good thing is that it shocked my kids so much that they stopped whining. But the only thing that kind of broke me out of my self-imposed pity party was my daughter goes, Mommy. I go, yes, sweetheart. She goes, I think you forgot our popsicles. So I said, yes.
Back down to earth.
Right back down to reality. So I find them Bounty. I go into the kitchen. I'm pouring the orange juice into the mold to make them their popsicles. And I am mad at the universe. I am like cursing out God. Like, how could you do this to me? I had my book in the hands of a publisher in New York who was going to make me a superstar. And then that guy gets Oprah and I get them. Anyway, and then I have this vision. And I don't want to say, God spoke to me and said, remember the book, because when I say that, people think it's like the voice of Charlton Heston, like, remember the book. It's not like that. It's like a little impulse, remember the book. And I remember this book that I had read years before, and it was about a guy who had died, and he went to the other side. And it's one of these books where they have this experience where he went through the tunnel of darkness, and there at the end of the tunnel, there is this being of light. And this guy was a military guy and a businessman, and he was so not into Ooga Booga. But when he came back from the experience, because he came back, he wrote this book, and he tried to convince people to be believers. Anyway, so his experience was, he sees this being of light. The being of light says to him, would you like to see the high points of your life? The old movie reel thing that they say happens on the other side. And he said, yes, I would. And he said the movie reel was very short. It just showed him showing his son how to swing a baseball bat and dancing with his daughter at her wedding. There's about 2 things on the reel. And the man says, but what about the time I brought my company public? And what about the time I did this? And what about the time I did that? And the being of light said, all of those things glorified you. And then the being of light said, would you like to see the life of somebody else who has just passed over? And he indignantly said, yes, he did. And the being of light, they tell the story that these curtains of golden light parted, and there sitting on a throne of light was the woman who used to clean his house, who took 2 or 3 buses just to clean. And she was surrounded by a host of angels. And the being of light said, would you like to see the high points of her life? And he said, yes, I would. And it was an endless reel. It showed her carrying a pot of soup to a sick friend. It showed her comforting a child who had just been bullied. It showed her stroking her mother's hair as her mother was making her transition. It showed her cheering at a baseball game for the kids whose parents couldn't be there to cheer because they worked 2 or 3 jobs. And it showed her just going to church and hugging up everybody and saying, "How you doing today?" And then the being of light said, "You judged her as such a poor, pathetic creature, but she had a beautiful, happy life. And the thing that you find out when you come to this side is that the only thing that matters while you're on earth is how much love you give."
And then he said, "Now get out and go back and
go back and tell everybody that." And then when I remembered and I recalled that, I put those popsicles in the freezer and I went back and I hugged up those kids, and there I remained for another almost 20 years being a mom at home. But that's why I love what you do, because love is just damn good business. It doesn't mean that you have to stay and be a mom at home. It's infuse what you're doing with love, infuse your business with love. And that's why you're so unique in what you teach, because people think that it's mutually exclusive. Love is something you do at home, but business is business. And you bring love into business.
Well, thank you for saying that. But, it strikes me that your path is actually kind of moving back and forth between those arenas, right? So you did have love in business with the creation and the propagation of the seminar, and then you took that love and you applied it at home, and then the kids grew. But when they just turned out so great, you got lessons back from them, and then it was time for you to take that love and bring it back into business. And I think it's a really important inflection point, if that's the right way to say it, because I think there are a lot of people, and it generally tends to be women more than men, who make a decision to stay home and raise their kids. And then when it comes time to go back out into the workforce, make a living again, they feel like they've lost all that time and all that experience. And how can they possibly bring value to that world that they feel like they haven't been a part of for so long? So the love might be there, but the confidence may not. So how would somebody in that scenario kind of bring that passion and that confidence together for themselves?
Well, I'll tell you something. I've done both. I've had business. I've raised my kids. I have a business. Now I'm back to my business. And I learned more about running a business and about being effective in business and in life from being home with my children than everything I've learned anywhere else. As a matter of fact, I have friends, like my last business partner had an MBA from UCLA, and I am always sharing wisdom with her about our business. We are partners. We're no longer partners, but still very dear friends that I learned from my children. And actually, can I share one of the greatest things that I learned from?
You don't have to ask.
Okay. Mother, may I?
Oh, please.
So I would say that, and this is, again, very accurate. Last night, I gave a 90-minute talk on creating success. And during that talk, I told 3 different concepts about creating success that I learned from my children. And I'm going to share another one that I didn't even share last night. So, and in terms of the confidence, just know that running a household and being a leader in your home, because as soon as you have one child, you are a leader. And then you are a leader if you're the room mother, and you are a leader if you run the carnival or the science fair or the PTA. You have leadership skills. And actually, the person who's my executive assistant, she was the president of the PTA. She's one of the most competent people in the world. And she keeps saying, yes, but, as if she's only the president of the PTA. I don't have half the smarts as she does, or half the effectiveness as she does at how to do the day-to-day running of a business. So I think it's just a matter of recognizing that. But I'll tell you something that I did learn from my son. So my son loved basketball. He was born loving basketball. I am telling you, Steve, well, you know the kid. He was still holding on with one hand. He couldn't even stand by himself. And he was, with the other hand, he was shooting baskets into his little basketball hoop. And when he was
in his little Barney uniform.
In his little Barney, actually they did have a Barney costume. But I have to tell you what's very funny about that is that
I guess that's right. It is a costume, not a uniform.
No, it's not a uniform. But every other year for Halloween, Daniel was he was either a rapper or something having to do with basketball. And when he was 5, all the other kids were having their parties at Chuck E. Cheese, and he insisted that his party be at Michael Jordan's restaurant in Chicago, the one with the huge basketball on the roof that's not there anymore. Anyway, so the kid loved basketball. And when he was a freshman in high school, he actually made the A team, which is a big deal. But unfortunately, the saying is true that white boys cannot jump, decidedly so. He was one of the only white kids on his team at Evanston High School, and he spent the entire season on the bench. However, because he had to travel, because he had to go to all the freshman games and the varsity games and junior varsity games, he noticed that he had an eye for talent. So he started a website called IllinoisHighSchoolBasketball.com, IllinoisHSBasketball.com, and he would do scouting reports.
He was how old?
He was 14 when he started the website. And then when he was 16, there was a full-page article about him in Sports Illustrated. The headline was, "Why College Hoops Coaches Seek the Advice of a 16-Year-Old Scout." Because he was so good at it. He could tell who was going to be recruited by the best Division I schools and who was going to go into the leagues one day. I mean, you could, those of you who are basketball fans, you could go on Google and say, "Kid who discovered Anthony Davis." That was my son, Daniel Poneman, same last name. However, this is the great story about Daniel. One day Daniel comes home and he says, "You know, Mom, I just had a realization," because what he started doing was he would start making films of kids that he thought had promise, and he would send them out to high school coaches. Take a look at this kid. And that's how his reputation got so big. I remember one time the coach from Harvard came to Chicago to look at one of Daniel's suggestions, and he walks into the high school and Daniel hops up and goes to meet him. He says to Daniel, "I'm looking for Daniel Poneman." And Daniel, with braces, he wasn't even 16. I had to drive him there. Says, "Well, I'm Daniel Poneman." The look on this guy's face, you cannot believe. Anyway, he got him a good player. But so one day Daniel comes and he says to Fred and me, you know Fred well, my former husband, my wonderful former husband, and says, "Mom and Dad, listen, these Division I kids, yeah, I'm getting them scholarships, but they don't really need me. Anthony Davis would have gotten discovered anyway. But who really needs me are the Division II kids, because people don't come and scout them. And often they get lost under the radar and they end up, even though they have talent, they end up flipping burgers or worse, because they can't afford to be in the showcases, because the showcases cost $150, $200 to be in the showcases that these different athletic companies put on." So he says, "I'm going to start a free showcase. I'm going to start a nonprofit, and I'm going to put on free showcases for kids in the inner city of Chicago that are Division II prospects." We never discouraged our kids. We were never the discouragement committee for them. If they were given that idea, however they were given it, by God, by their inner self, by their higher self, they were given that idea, and our only job was to support it. And if it wasn't going to work out, they're going to learn soon enough. So he said, "Great idea, you go for it." So his first showcase had 10 coaches and about 30 kids, and his next had about 30 coaches and about 90 kids.
And this was where in Chicago was that?
Well, he held the showcases in the inner city, down at like Orr High School or one of those places. And you know the end of the story. His last showcase had 350 kids and about 140 coaches from all over the country. And to date, he has raised over $50 million in college scholarships for the kids in the city of Chicago.
Wow.
So now comes what I learned from him. So here is Daniel, and he also had scholarship offers to colleges everywhere. And one day he said, I don't want to go to college. I'm not the type of person who sits in a classroom and learns. And he loves to read biographies of great men and women. He loves doing that, but he self-teaches himself. He said, I'm not going to college. These kids in the inner city, they need me. And I'm not going to be wasting my time in learning some stuff like these courses that you have to take. I'm just not doing it. We said, we're not going to get any argument from us. But what happened was that he's getting all of these kids scholarships. And he was still in high school when he started doing it, and then into the years that his friends were going to college. And I would say to him, Daniel, honey, can't you make some money doing this? He would say, Mom, because you're not allowed to take any money for scouting high school basketball players for college coaches. It's against NCAA rules, although other people take money under the table. Daniel would not. So we would say, well, Daniel, isn't there some way that you can make money doing this? And he says to me, Mom, don't worry. I'm building relationship capital.
And he was, I know I keep asking this question.
He was maybe 16 at the time.
Still at 16. So he's done all this at 16.
Yeah, 16.
Okay. All right.
So then, because he's still in high school when he started his showcases. So then another maybe year will pass, and he has gotten millions of dollars for these kids, and he's still sleeping on our couch. Actually, I think he had a bed at that point, but he's still sleeping on our couch. Daniel, isn't there some way you can make some money doing this? And he said, Mom, you really have to be patient. Just observe what's happening. I am building relationship capital. So this went on for a little while longer, and you know the end of this story too. He had the idea to make a documentary about what it's like for the kids growing up in the inner city of Chicago and about how basketball is the only way out. We watched the premiere together. I watched it at your house. I'm remembering this now. So when he had the idea to make that film, he went to somebody with whom he had built relationship capital that gave him $400,000 to make the film. Because he always says, just do good things for people, lift people up, just like he did for these kids, and it'll all come out in the end. It'll all come out in the wash, whatever. And then a few more years pass, and now he's getting consulting fees, and people are paying him just for his advice because he's so freaking successful. His website is booming. He's, and everybody wants to be in the Daniel Poneman world. And then he decides that he wants to start a sports agency besides his nonprofit, which he also doesn't take any money from, even though he raised all this money. He decides he wants to start an athlete management firm where he would represent NBA players and NFL players. And somebody who he had built relationship capital with gave him millions to start his own firm. And I won't mention names, but you could go online and you could see, because the name of his company is Beyond.am, Beyond.athlete management. But if you go, you see that he's in partnership with one of the wealthiest families in the country, a household name in this country, because he built relationship capital.
And needless to say, he's no longer 16 years old. But he understood the concept of relationship capital. And I think it's amazing that he even used that phraseology. Like, where did he learn that, right? and was so, not just understood the concept, but knew it so deeply that he lived that way at a time when, it's the opposite of instant gratification, which is, I think, was my main motivator when I was that age. Right? So he's saying, I'm investing in this and it's going to pay off later on. And what I'm investing in is the quality of the people that I know, the reputation that I have for what I do for them, the opportunities that I create for them. And that will come back some way, somehow. And boy, did it ever.
And he didn't do what he did because he thought, okay, I'm going to do a favor for this guy because in the future, but he just knew the law of karma, basically. You do good and good will come back to you. And he just knew it innately. But the term relationship capital, I have no idea how he came up with it. But I'll tell you another part of the story. So I was telling the story about relationship capital and at a seminar that I was giving, and Daniel happened to be there. And after the seminar, he comes up to me, he says, Mom, you always give me credit for that. But I learned the concept from you. And I said, what are you talking about? I never heard that concept, relationship capital. He says, no. He said, it's the same story that you tell. It's a slightly different angle. He said, you always teach in your seminars to treat everybody as the most important person in the world. You always taught me, Mom, that you don't judge people by the color of their skin, by their gender, by who they love, by if they're old or they're young or the way they dress or they have funny crooked glasses, that the person standing in front of you is always the most important person in the world at that time, and not to look around the room and see if there's somebody else more important to talk to. And so you're the one that I learned that from. And I also remember that when you retired to be a mom at home and then you came back and you wanted to come back into the world of speaking, that the people who remembered what you had done for them were the ones who just said, you're back, I'm getting you speaking engagements. And Janet Atwood from the Passion Test, our mutual friend, she got me my first 2 speaking engagements. One was at a huge event up in Canada, and another was a huge event in San Diego with Ray Blanchard, actually. And they remember what I had done for them. And then Marcy, our wonderful friend, Marcy Scheimoff, who had since taking my seminar, she was actually my secretary. She took my seminar, asked if she could work for me, and I made her my secretary assistant. And when she knew I was coming back on the scene, she just said to me, let's start a business together. And we started this company together. She had the idea, but she didn't know who she wanted to do it with. She couldn't think of anybody. But then when I came back on the scene, she invited me and we co-created Your Year of Miracles. So my first business endeavor was a $1 million business right out of the chute because I had built relationship capital.
And is it safe to say, I know this is a bit of a leading question, but those people with whom you built the relationship capital, notice how I used the word whom there. They rose up to help you at the time you needed it for one really simple reason. They love you. Right? That's really what it comes down to. And you could call it, and yet relationship capital sounds like a nice translation into kind of rational business speak. But the bottom line is, what does it mean, right? So it's the relationship and the value of that relationship. And a relationship has real value in it when it's not built because of the value that you hope to gain someday. It's built because of love. It's built because you care. It's built because you want to help. And it's done without any quid pro quo in mind. And when and if it comes back, that's fantastic. But it's this interesting nuance. The minute you approach a relationship with that desire of a specific return, people will call bullshit on it, and that's as far as it's going to go.
That's what I say. People have authenticity meters, and your authenticity just went way over into the negative range. And it's interesting because Janet Atwood was broke when she took my seminar, and she had the idea for the Passion Test in my seminar, and she told me that she wanted to be like me when she grew up. So I gave her first speaking gig. I let her speak at one of my Yes to Success seminars, and that was the first time she ever spoke on the stage. And same with Marcy. Marcy actually got her first speaking gig because I got sick, and I made her go do it for me, and she got the speaking bug. But I never thought, oh, Janet one day is going to be a New York Times bestselling author and is going to get me a speaking gig 20 years from now. I just gave her a chance because she was a wonderful, darling person. And she was excited about what I was teaching, and I was excited about her beauty and her enthusiasm. And I just have to share one other story because of course, I take what's the word? Not responsibility, credit. It's credit for everybody's success, including yours. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But I do want to tell that story about how when you took and I remember it like it was yesterday. I even remember where you were standing in the room. Audience, I'm talking to all of you. When I teach my Yes to Success seminars, people stand up all the time because I do a lot of sharing. This is a live seminar. Steve Farber stands up and he's just sharing about something. I don't know what it was. And I stop him in the middle and I said, you have to be a professional speaker. And he was like, no. I go, yes. And I remember what I said to you. You are effortlessly funny. You are effortlessly brilliant. Handsome, of course. And you have the it factor. You have that charisma thing going on. You've got to be a professional speaker. So I know that you worked in the financial world for a while longer, but I hope that I planted a seed because now you're one of the most sought after speakers in your field.
No, I also remember that really vividly. I was in a situation where I actually worked for your husband. I'm telling this for the benefit of our listeners, obviously. You already know this. In the commodities futures business. And I was in that business because I needed to make money because I had a young family. And this was in the early 80s. And I hated it. I was miserable. I hated it from day one. I hated it so much that I actually ended up having my own company where I did the same thing, as bizarre as that sounds. But in somewhere in that transition time, so I was discovering that I was an entrepreneur, but somewhere in there is when I took the seminar, and you and I, we had more conversations than just outside of that. And I remember you kind of lighting up and saying, you need to pursue this. And then you actually sent me to somebody to discuss it. Somebody who had a seminar business at the time. And I got really excited about it. I didn't know that such a thing existed. It was completely off my radar screen. It was a few more years before I ended up going in that direction, but that seed was definitely planted. And to our point, yes, you and I had known each other for a long time at that point, but you had no other motive to point me in that direction other than your love for me and where you thought I could go. And that was all it took. It wasn't like you were looking to get some kind of a referral fee. I mean, I know. I mean, isn't this obvious? We do this for each other. We do this for people we love. So to take that principle of relationship capital and expand it out requires us, it seems to me, to extend that beyond the obvious, beyond just the people in our inner, personal circle of friendship, and see how far beyond that personal circle we can extend it, like your son Daniel did. He made this opportunity available for all basketball players in inner city Chicago. They didn't have to know him to be a part of it. It was a more generalized love that had very specific consequences for lots of individuals. And that's the opportunity that we all have is we tend to think, well, we help the people that we love. Well, how about expanding what that population is?
Absolutely. And that's why I have to go back to how much I love what you do. Love is just damn good business because he did it for those kids because he loved those kids. And I mean, they were kids. Some of them were older than he was at the time, but he saw the struggles that kids had in the inner city and how good he had it in his life. And he just wanted to give back. He wanted to give something. And there was nothing that he was looking for in return, but just helping people make their lives better. And that is, like you say, it's out of love. And I have to tell you one other Daniel story, which you haven't heard yet. But one day, this is last year, I had a mentoring group. Okay, and there were 10 women, and we were at a retreat in Chicago, and we invited all of the Daniel to come and have lunch with us. So we're sitting around a table. Did I ever tell you the story?
No,
I didn't tell your listeners the story. So
I'm picturing it because all those women would have just, oh my gosh, they would have just eaten him up. He's such a beautiful kid.
Right, and we were at Manny's Deli. Manny's Deli down on Maxwell Street. And they're just talking back and forth, and they're asking Daniel questions, and he's talking about his nonprofit, Shot in the Dark Foundation, and he's talking about what he's doing. And then finally, one of these women, Sue Shelley, she just goes, okay, Daniel, what can we do for you? How can we help you? And Daniel says, well, the thing is, I am so lucky that I get to do what I love, like be in the world of basketball and do good for people through my nonprofit and make money through my agency. And I just feel so blessed in my life. And he said, but when I think about what you could do for me, because I'm sitting there thinking, yes, money for Shot in the Dark Foundation, right? And he goes, what you could do for me, he says, wherever you live, there's a need there as well. Whatever city, whatever town, he said, and you have something that you love to do. He said, what you could do for me is go back to your town, go back to your city, and look for the need there and see how you can contribute by doing what you love to do. Because it all ends up at the same place anyway.
Wow. Beautiful. You know what? Here's what I feel inspired to say at the moment. You ready? Good job, Mom. Good job. I mean, what an incredible example. Somebody would have to grow up with to be so deeply immersed in that idea that it's just comes naturally to him. So I want to make sure, there's a couple of things I want to make sure about as we bring this in for a landing. We talked about Daniel's movie, Shot in the Dark, but we didn't say the name. So it is A Shot in the Dark is the name of it.
Not an A at the beginning. It's just Shot in the Dark.
Shot in the Dark. It's a great story.
I think it was it was produced by Fox. I can't remember, but I think you can only get it on demand is the only streaming service.
And then the foundation that he set up around it is Shot in the Dark Foundation. So we'll make sure that the information is there for people to see.
And it's of course, people think, oh, is it named because most of these kids have as much chance of succeeding as A Shot in the Dark? Well, that's part of it. But also, if you watch the movie, you'll see the shot in the dark that happened and think of a basketball shot. And it just gives me goosebumps when you see
several levels of meaning to that title.
Lots of meaning, yes.
We'll leave it a mystery for people to
see. A mystery.
And then the other thing that I'd like for you to share with us is, I feel very fortunate because we're such close friends, and people that are meeting you for the first time and hearing your wisdom and your enthusiasm and your great stories and great story of your own life, they want to know a couple of things. They want to know what you would advise them to do. And it's not an entirely fair question because everybody's a little bit different. But what one or two nuggets that you can leave us with that I can, that folks can go out and start putting into practice right now? I mean, we've talked about relationship capital. We've talked about treating every idea that you have as if you are meant to do it. Anything else that you'd like to leave people with in terms of actionable nuggets?
Yeah, take a step from which there's no turning back. because people have all these great ideas. And what happens is that, and I do believe that your ideas are sacred, so they should be kept secret. So your step should not be just telling everybody what you're going to do. People say, oh, if you tell people what you're going to do and then you have to do it. I say you tell people what you're going to do and then you probably won't do it. But if you take a step from which there's no turning back, like in my case, this is very funny, but when I decided that I was going to give these seminars, and I rented a room at the Santa Monica Public Library because I had to push myself into doing it because I was 28 years old at the time. I only had a degree from Maharishi International University in the science of creative intelligence, and I was broke. And I was going to teach people how to be successful. I drove a beat up old Chevy Bel Air. So I had to take a step from which there was no turning back. So what I did was I rented a room and I went around putting up posters. It's a lot different now, but I say take a step from which there is no turning back. And the other thing is, and this is, it might be seem woo-woo, airy-fairy, but I absolutely believe it. And that is, don't doubt. Because you were given in Sanskrit, we call it a dharma. Dharma is what you were put on earth to do. You were given your talents because you're meant to use them. I was always a good speaker. I gave speeches in the 8th grade. That is a dharma that I have. Other people are brilliant with numbers, brilliant with building businesses, brilliant with organizing people, brilliant at leadership, brilliant at inspiring. Whatever you're brilliant at, whatever idea that is that you're going to make money, that you're going to bring it into fruition, stop talking about it and take a step from which there's no turning back. Is Martin Luther King says, you don't have to know the whole, what is it? You don't have to know the whole staircase, just take one step. I probably mixed up 3 things that he said, but just take a step. And then the other steps will be revealed to you. You don't need to know the whole plan. That's another thing. Oh, I'll start when I have a business plan. Would you please just take a step from which there's no turning back? And then the next step and the next step will be revealed to you. You can't steer a parked car. You got to start driving the car out of the driveway. And then if you have to course correct, then you make a different turn. But get moving. You know, people say, oh, I'm visualizing what I'm going to do. Oh, that's great. But faith without action is worthless. You can have all the faith, but you have to take action.
So that's a really important point, because you mentioned earlier the law of attraction, which became really popular with The Secret and all that. And a big misinterpretation about the law of attraction is that all you have to do is kind of set up that tuning fork like you talked about, get the right thoughts and the right vibes, and it'll all come, crashing down on your head. And really, that's the foundation for it. But then you have to take the action. You have to take such significant action that once you take that step, there's no turning back from it.
That's right.
And because it's an unprecedented step for you, the only way to prove that you're ready for that step is to take the step. The only way to prove it.
That's exactly right. And I'll tell you one other thing just about The Secret, about visualizing. I also think that people have visualizing all wrong. I'm all about visualizing, but it's not, this is how I teach people to visualize, and do it every morning before you even get out of bed. But it's not, I will have a bestseller, I will have a bestseller, I will have a bestseller. No, the way I tell people to visualize is think of the people opening your book, reading a concept, their life changing, their heart just filled with gratitude for you because of the contribution that you made, and feel that love from them back in your heart, and just visualize the contribution that your work is going to make, the contribution that the way it's going to change lives. And when you feel goosebumps, that's when your visualization is done, not I will have a bestseller, I will have a bestseller, I will have a bestseller.
And then get to work.
And then get your butt out of that bed and get to work.
Then get your ass out of bed.
Because it only works if you work it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And then the other kind of last question, one of the last questions, is how do people get more of you? You gave us some great advice. So I want to get me some more Deb. Where do I get me some more of that Debra Poneman? So is any resources, any place that people can reach out to you? What's the story?
Yeah, people could go on my website, which is Yes to Success, YESTO, not the number 2, YESTO, yes2success.com. And there are a lot of resources there. There are some videos, what I recommend that you do is download my ebook. You see right on the front, just put your name and email and then we'll send you the ebook. One of the chapters in the ebook, it's not, is
it about me?
Well, it's about love. There is one chapter. It's 5 chapters, and one is about love and how love is the basis to success. Somehow, I can't remember the exact subtitle of the chapter on love, but there are 5 chapters. And you know how I wrote that book? I had my book, remember, in the hands of a New York publisher, and then I decided to stay home with the little darlings. And ever since then, people are saying, when are you going to get that book written? And it's written already. And I just have not been in the mood to make it into like a big book and do everything you need to make it a bestseller. So I thought, you know what, I'll make an ebook. I'll take the most juicy, salient, important concepts, I'll put it in an ebook, and I'll give it to people. And that's what you could get on my website.
Beautiful. And what a lovely way to build relationship capital.
That's right.
Yeah.
You have a book.
Well, fantastic, Deb. Thanks so much for being here and sharing your light and your heart and your wisdom with us. That'll wrap it up for this episode of the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast. So until next time, folks, don't forget, I'm going to put slightly different words in Debra's mouth, but I think she'll subscribe to these words as well. Don't forget to do what you love in the service of people who love what you do. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Love is Just Damn Good Business with Steve Farber. Join us again next time, because when customer and employee satisfaction just isn't enough anymore, we are here to back you up with specific ideas to operationalize love to make an enormous difference in your business, personal life, and the world around you. Visit our website at stevefarber.com to leave a review. And don't forget to share the love with your colleagues and friends, because after all, it's just damn good business.